Hey everyone, this is The Street Live. I'm Jeff Mark, standing on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with Jim Cramer. Jim, we got so much to talk today. Markets are higher. We got a lot of earnings to talk about and more. But first, I got to get your take. You just interviewed Vlad Tenev, CEO of Robinhood. They're becoming public today. What do you have to say? What do you think about the IPO?
I met Vlad Tenev, I guess maybe 7 years ago. And he showed me the app. And my hope was one day that a whole generation of new people who really haven't cared at all about stocks will discover this amazing world of ours. We did lose a lot of people. Remember, there was a generation that just went away, and that was the generation from 2000, 2001. It laid waste their savings. And along comes a kid from Bulgaria, two guys from Bulgaria, but kid from Bulgaria, who has an app that makes it so all the things that make it difficult to buy a stock just go away. And since then, they've discovered, since the craziness of GameStop, let's broaden it. Yes, payment for order flow. I mean, I happen to think that as long as you disclose, well, so what? I mean, some people may feel that they don't get the best price. Some people feel they do, but it's your choice. But what Vlad did was make it so that people said, if there's no fees and I don't have to talk to anybody, well, then I'm in. And the only thing I can possibly relate this to is Domino's, which is the best performing stock of our generation. As soon as they made it so you didn't have to speak to anybody, it could be an app. Well, that's what they want. This new generation is very, very smart about their time. And they want to buy. They want it now. I am glad to hear that Vlad's talking about how not everybody's a flipper. It's what I didn't want to hear because I'm worried about the deal itself. But what Vlad's done is truly democratize, and when you lower fees and you have a good app and you have companies that live and breathe, where you came in chiefly at the bottom when they rushed in, when everyone else is rushing out, I regard it as pure joy. And I was very upset when GameStop happened because I knew it wasn't Vlad's fault. It was, and we would talk very much during that period where he would say, why is this happening? And I'd say, well, okay, Vlad, you have to understand, you have 20 million people, and they all came to work one day and started trading, and don't feel bad. You want to be the single source of truth, and you want to be safety, which he's developed. But he was really, really down. I remember one Saturday night I was talking with him and my wife was saying, listen, it's your own success that has hurt you. You obviously each are a fine person, but who could have expected that you could have so much business? And I remember when Lisa was talking to him, I said, good, my wife was not involved with the business, and she was so joyous that he had gotten so many people in with the app, including her son. But then felt bad for him. And I know people who are listening will say, well, how can you feel bad for a billionaire? You have to understand, Vlad Tenev was he was aghast about what happened. And there are people who hate him, people who hate me. The difference is, of course, they hate him, they keep signing up. So I'm proud of him. I think he's a great man. And I think he's a great man because he resurrected what you and I do and looked at what Mad Money was and said, you and I do the same thing. We're getting people in who've never been in and are going to make a lot of money. And he has made a huge number of people a lot of money.
Oh, if that product was around when I was 18, when I was in high school and college, it would be the greatest thing in the world. Like, sit in class and trade stocks on your phone.
It would be hard not to do it. I questioned him. I said, these stocks that have 20 million shares, they trade 100 million. I'm not thrilled with that, and I don't like the balance of common stock to options. And the reason I say that is because we've had an amazing market since Robinhood really exploded on the scene. And you know that if we had, say, too many days like we had in February of 2018 or when we had in March of 2020 where we just had this cascade down, the option people, unless they own puts, of course, are always run the risk of being wiped out. And we don't want that. We don't want this cohort wiped out. That's why I asked them, I said, how many of them take delivery? Because I want them to, I don't want them all to be flippers because to get this new investment class, I think trading should be part of your repertoire and owning should be part. I'm not against trading, but I want people to have a piece of the country. And you weren't here during the days when Grasso ran the exchange, but Grasso used to talk endlessly about owning a piece of America. own a piece of a company. And then that got obliterated. Grasso got fired or left or whatever. And instead we got this whole index thing. Now, I think indexes, I have indices in my portfolio, but that's not what Vlad's about. That app is about owning, well, now studying and owning a piece of America. Now, will it have to be done kind of through the options way? Well, maybe. But no one, these people were never going to buy a stock until Vlad Tenev came along. Never.
So you almost long for the days where you buy a couple shares of Disney and they send you a certificate and then mail.
Those great days. But what this does is it really makes people recognize, you know what, I can buy, I don't like beef. I like make it so that it's made out of grain. Well, you know what, I'm going to buy 3 shares of Beyond Meat and own it. And there is a big component of people who do that. Not everybody's an options trader. And I say that because, not that I'm against options traders, one of the largest options traders on Wall Street, but I think that I want people to go to work and own stocks, because once we all go back to work, it's very difficult to trade options.
All right, well, let's talk about the return to the office place. So we're seeing Google, they're requiring their employees who come back to the office to be vaccinated. Facebook, the same. Now, this morning, Danny Meyer of the Union Square Hospitality Group, he is requiring both his employees and customers to show proof of vaccination. Now, Jim, you own a couple restaurants. What do you think about this decision?
My desire, but the customers won't take it. They don't want that. I think that Danny has a lot of power, and I think there are a lot of people who are going to want to go to his places. Once you know that, it's a great selling point for Danny's places. I myself was very concerned about people who thought I was being dictatorial. I now have a great manager and let him handle it. But we got the best ventilation. We made sure we had great ventilation, which is what stops even the. Well, you can't stop the Delta variant, and people are far too cavalier about the Delta variant. If I'm in, you would have given me the Delta variant already if you weren't vaccinated.
Sure.
And we know, say from last night's Phillies Nats game, that those players who were there were many asymptomatic, but they were all J&J.
Yeah.
And
the lack thereof, Phillies Nats.
Yes, and lack thereof. And I think that if you're J&J, you got to go get right now, before Delta really sweeps us. You got to go get a Pfizer or a Moderna.
I do think it's interesting because it almost reminds me of Costco's decision last year to acquire masks in their stores, because once they required all their shoppers to wear masks, it actually became the safest place in town to shop.
And Costco numbers went nuts to the upside, because there's people who, like me, frankly, because of my age, I don't want to be with people who are not vaccinated because of what the tables say about my age. Not because I hate them, and there's also, by the way, a tremendous, when you say what I just said, people just say, you're a fascist. Who are you to tell me what? I'm looking at the tables for people my age, and it is a risk factor. And I don't want the government to be saying to someone like me, just stay home. I want the government to be saying people should get vaccinated, so Cramer and his, baby boomer 50 million cohort is able to go out without fear. And I think there are a lot of people, particularly in my mentions column, who just continually say, who am I to tell them what to do? Now, I got a polio shot, and I did it because it was American. It's what Eisenhower wanted. It was patriotic. But somehow these people are either, they don't regard it as patriotic to get the shot, and I think that's a shame.
All right, Jim, before we get into the big earnings of last night, Facebook, PayPal, Ford, we're going to talk about what a quarter that was. Let's talk about what is also moving markets today, and that's the infrastructure package. We did have a bipartisan agreement in the Senate.
We didn't get a chance to talk about it.
We're seeing stocks like Nucor and Cleveland Cliffs today absolutely flying. Is it too late to buy an infrastructure play?
I mean, Cleveland Cliffs was at 4 times earnings, now it's at 5. Nucor's at 5 times earnings next year, now it's at 6. Cleveland Cliffs not nearly as good a company as Nucor, but you want the leverage. People want the leverage to this infrastructure. It's fine. Now, look, there are 2 parts that I like about this. One is that it will definitely lead to orders from Nucor, and they came on Mad Money and said that it's great. But also, the Republicans and Democrats work together to do something. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about that at the top of this was, I've not seen that in a long time, and maybe A lot of people have said that maybe that Biden's not as engaged. Well, they got this done, and I'm trying to remember when was the last time they got it done with Republicans. They didn't jam it down people's throat. So I was thrilled, and you should buy Nucor. Those who are watching it and are not members of the club, you should buy Nucor right here.
Yeah, you know who's also a big consumer of steel? Automakers and Ford. Ford reported last night, they talked about, it was a surprise profit when expectations were for a loss. They also talked about increasing vehicle production by 30% over the second half of the year, so that's going to be a lot of steel coming in. You've been a big believer in CEO Jim Farley and his turnaround. I want to save the conversation about Ford, the stock, to our AAP video, but let's focus on the chip shortage in general.
Okay.
What do you think the read-through was?
I'll tell you what, Jim's not like most executives. Jim said, okay, there's a chip shortage. I'm going to make 100 calls and be very energized and find where I can get the chips. And I'm going to cobble together these full-featured chips so I don't miss nearly as many sales. I feel awful about the $2 billion. I got to cut that. And I got to stop selling cars anywhere in trucks where I'm not making money. Hence, China, he turned that around. And it was really, he found the chips, okay? People have to understand. There are a lot of people who say, well, look, there's a terrible chip shortage. What Farley did was say, there's a terrible chip shortage, but there's Global Foundries, there's Samsung, and there's Taiwan Semi, and then there's also companies like Lam and ASM and KLA, and I'm going to call all of them, and I am going to find chips. And that's what he did to meet those orders. He worked himself. He met with almost everybody in the industry. He didn't just say, oh, darn it. And that's my kind of guy. That's a guy who says, I'm not going to just say, hey, there's a chip shortage, so sorry. I'm going to find the chips. And what he said to me was, look, they're making chips 24/7 somewhere. I'm just going to barge in and say, I want my share. And that's why he did the quarter. Well, there's many reasons we'll talk about it, but he was not going to let that stop him because that's not him. He's very different from anyone I've ever met.
Yeah, that was a special moment in the conference call when he really talked about just having that stronger relationship with the chip manufacturers. Now, that's also...
He always asks me, he says, do you know Caulfield Global Foundries? He says, I'm calling him. I said, well, good. What are you going to say to him? He goes, I'm going to say I want every chip he has. And it's like, all right, Jim, good luck to you. And then he would come back. He said, well, okay, so how about this Taiwan Semi? And I said, look, Jim, I don't have a good relationship with Taiwan Semi. I don't know them. He goes, all right, I'm going to make some calls. And always he would come back and say, listen, I can't tell you anything that you're not allowed to know. But let's just say there's a chip shortage, but those who want to jawbone get their chips, and we're never, ever going to have this happen again. Meaning he's going from just in time to just in case. He recognizes his products, and we're going to talk about that during our own call. He recognizes that this is a different time, and he's using an order mode. Ford's never used an order mode. They're doing an order mode, and that's leading to a level of organization where he can actually, the analysts didn't understand at all. He knows what amount of inventory they should have. That's never been what Ford way. So
that transformation is very exciting. So
what's it doing in 14? I mean, honest to God. I mean, he's going to have such a huge year next year. I mean, look, the stock traded at 18 in 2020, in 2011, with nowhere near the product or anything having to do with what he's got now. And then it had very wayward leadership. That's all solved.
Yeah, it's been a great win for club members of Action Alerts Plus this year, too. That's now hit on Facebook, so shares are lower today. The CFO, David Wenner, talked about how that we're going to see a significant deceleration in revenue growth. Now, yesterday you talked about it was almost inevitable that Facebook was going to decline in the print just because of that run-up that we saw after Twitter reported, Snap reported, and Alphabet. So do you think investors are really keying on that revenue deceleration expectation, or is it just elevated expectations?
No, he did say, look, it's definitive slowdown, and yet there's absolutely no sign that there's definitive slowdown. I mean, let's put it this way. I'm going to contrast it to a UPS and Carol Tomei. Carol Tomei was trying to say what Dave said, but she was trying to soften it. But Dave, because of his credibility, was able to say this, that stock will be up in 3 days from now. Carol doesn't have the credibility at UPS, so now you got to plow through all this negativity. But they both were saying the same thing, which is that, look, we have this big business that's omni-channel, and, you're up against some very difficult omni-channel compares. No kidding. Now, like Domino's was plus 2%, and people went nuts for it, right? They went crazy for it. Yum was up very big versus 2019. That's why that boy's at a good stock. But all that he's saying is, remember how strong things were last year, and Carol said that. Remember how strong things were last year, but the way they said it meant that you should buy Facebook and then sell UPS. And I'm glad that UPS has settled down, and I think it is a buy.
All right, and we're running a little bit short on time, but Jim, quick thoughts on the metaverse that CEO Mark Zuckerberg laid out last night.
Who works with us will drive you to Unity, which has it, but the metaverse is about interacting with yourself and others. And NVIDIA was called out. NVIDIA has a view that one day you'll walk into a virtual room and there'll be lots of people and you can talk to them. Now, there's a lot of people who are alone in this country. And my daughter worked with kids who are really troubled. And, they all feel very alone. Well, you can, in some ways, create your own people. You can create who you want to talk with. It's a kind of it's very hard to get your arms around because it's so otherworldly. But check Unity and understand that NVIDIA's chips allow you to imagine. And if you really wanted to imagine, maybe you imagine a conversation among people who like Shakespeare. Or imagine a conversation about, I'll give you a class example of what I would like. I'd like to go into a room and say, hey, what did you guys think of Ted Lasso last night? Yeah. And one of them said, well, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, well, who's your favorite character? And one guy says Coach Beard. And another one says Danny. That's what's going to happen, okay? That's metaverse.
Yeah, and what I kind of think about this metaverse idea is there's a lot of toxicity out there in social media, but laying out that vision that Zuckerberg talked about, that you just talked about, going in a room, talking with people, I think that's kind of the heart of what social media is supposed to be.
Yeah, and I feel so bad. I used to read all my Twitter comments, but the horrible things that people say about me and my family is quite a shame because I like the interaction. I went in there this morning at 3:30, and it was just people who talked about how I hurt people in Didi. Did I know that the Chinese government was going to crack down? No way. And I did a piece at the top last night saying, all these people, they love to say, I bet against you, I bet against you. I coined FANG. FANG has been what I've been behind since day one. And if they bet against me, well, they don't have any money. They've been wiped out a long time ago. So I feel it's a shame. I'm kindred with Vlad. And the people who Vlad has brought in, they're not like these. There's not 22 million people who hate what you and I do. There's probably 20 million people who are thrilled for the education and want to be great investors. And then there's another maybe 2,000 who think that I hurt them when I said sell GameStop at 400. And I think it's a shame. It's going to have to run its course because the hatred can't burn. I've been involved in many situations, sadly, where the hatred burns. And I want people to recognize that the hatred is misplaced. I just want people to make money.
All right, now, Jim, last one for today. PayPal shares are sinking a bit today after the company missed revenues and they lowered guidance.
Remember what we said? We said, Dan, we said, look, what Dan does, John Rainey too, is they present all the negatives.
CEO, CFO.
They present all the negatives. People sell, and take a look. Take a look at the pattern. They sell today. They sell tomorrow, okay, at least in the morning, and then you got to buy. And this is no different, believe me. If you haven't started a position in PayPal, wait till 3:30 and buy some. That's because these brokers like to jam down the stock to show that they got a better price. They sell it now, down 17, they knock it down 20, and that's not nefarious. It's the way it works. Nefarious versus not. Then what happens, you buy it tomorrow when the selling's over, and then you come back 3 months later.
Now, what about something you wrote about on Real Money, and it's that if there is some confusion that you have during earnings season, follow the price target boost, and we did see a lot of price target boosts on PayPal this morning.
I sometimes in facetious ways say, oh my God, another guy raised price target, but you don't take your cue from the action, take your cue from the price targets, because when the price targets are up, what that really means is they've had good conversations with management, they're very excited about what's going on, and please don't sell. You'll see situations where there's downgrades. You'll see situations where there's no price target boost, and those are bad. The no price target means the stock is go down, and a downgrade obviously means the stock's finished. But I want very much to recognize, this is really, really important, that the piece I did in Real Money is about you and trying to decipher the market. And to go back full circle, I always like to talk to Vlad Tenev, because he said, Jim, you like to decipher the market, which makes it so that more people want to own stocks. Thank you, Vlad. Thank you, Vlad Tenev.
Yeah, that's something great to point out. You do it every night.
That's my goal, and I just feel like, we got so many people who hate me, and I can be tough. I've had personal instances where people really hate me. I've had everything, and I just wish that people would recognize who I am, and recognize that I'm not reading their negative tweets. Someone else does for me now. I read the positives. He sends me, I have a terrific guy, Dylan Reback, and he goes, look, I'm not going to have you read all the horrible things they say. Here's some constructive negatives, and here's some constructive positives. Constructive negative I love, because then I get better.
All right, and let's leave it there, and that's the show for the day and for the week. We're off tomorrow, but we'll be back Monday. Have a great weekend, everyone.